Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Doctorate. I'm a small animal general practitioner, and I have this channel for my own personal fun and hopefully some fun and education for you guys as well. Today we're doing something a little bit different than my most of my videos. Most of my videos you guys ask me about food and you're interested about food, but I've been getting a lot of questions and I answer a lot of questions in the comments related to food allergies and what are the particulars and what's the science and the information behind food allergies in pets. And so today's going to be more of actually kind of a lecture series, and you guys be sure to like and subscribe and let me know your thoughts below on these style of videos, because if you enjoy them, I can do more of them. And so this is going to be a lecture style. It's going to be a lecture style similar to how I would explain things maybe to a new veterinary technician. It's not going to be in depth. I understand that. It's not going to be in detail. It's not going to be super scientific because everybody has different educational backgrounds and I don't know where those lie. So it's not going to be like I'm talking to a colleague. It's not going to be like I'm talking to another veterinarian or instructing even a veterinary student. It's going to be really basic, I hope, and very informative. And so it's going to be kind of a fun like PowerPoint presentation. I hope you guys enjoy. So allergies in pets, in the order of the most common. I think this is one of the most interesting things that I have seen as I've started this YouTube channel. And there's a little bit of a disproportion, I think, of what the public understands as what is common as far as allergies in pets. So the number one allergy that we see in pets, especially as it manifests in the skin, is going to be, at least in my state here in Florida, is going to be flea allergy dermatitis, allergy from external parasites, so fleas and ticks. By far the most common. If you have a pet that lives in the state of Florida and your pet is not on flea prevention, they 100% have fleas. And that needs to be addressed before any other allergies are even investigated, because fleas are highly, the saliva of the fleas and ticks is highly stimulatory in animals, and one flea can set off an entire cascade of inflammation, and it is by far statistically the most common allergy in pets. So that's number one. Number two is going to be atopic dermatitis. We did a little video on that on this channel. Atopic dermatitis is just a fancy way of saying environmental allergies, and we can go into that in another series further, but environmental allergies in pets are inhaled. And so, yes, they're in the environment, but anything that the pet inhales then has a allergic stimulation result, and that results in, skin itchiness and things like that. And then number three is going to be food allergies. So very, very, very low on the list. They did a survey of the Banfield pet hospitals, because they've got a huge database, and as a corporation, very easy to data mine data from them. And they did a study, and they found that food allergies in dogs are actually realistically only diagnosed less than 5% of the time. And so it is very statistically rare in the general population that a pet has food allergies. And so why are we talking about that? Because so many people, disproportionate than 5%, I would say, like, it's the flip-flop on this channel. Like 90% of people tell me their pet has an allergy to some sort of a food, has a chicken allergy or this allergy or that allergy. They're pulling their hair out of their head and they can't figure it out, and they can't find a food because their dog is allergic to this and this and that, and there's no food that can meet all those requirements. And the first thing I always tell you guys is, how is that food allergy diagnosed? Because statistically, what I am seeing here is just not likely. And so it may be just an impression you had. It may be something that these pet food marketing, and these other gurus are trying to convince you. But food allergy actually has a definition. We're going to go into that now. It actually has a realistic and true way that it is diagnosed, and it actually is very statistically small in the population. Okay? And so proper diagnosis is always key. Okay? Garbage in, garbage out. If the diagnosis is not obtained properly, then the treatment plan is not going to be proper, and that's where you're going to get all these frustrations and people saying they switched food 5 or 6 times and it's not working, or they did it for a period of time and then it stopped working, or these types of things. So diagnosis is key. The food allergy is statistically very rare, and there is a difference between a food allergy and a food sensitivity. Okay, so from a human perspective, and I don't do humans, and so we're going to talk about the difference between humans and pets in a minute, but there are people that have peanut allergies, right? It's one of the most common, ones that we worry about. Children, especially like in my kids' class, there's a kid that has a peanut allergy. Like, you can't send anything with peanuts. There can be no peanuts. If the kid comes in contact with a peanut, it's like a catastrophic, life-threatening event. That is an allergy. As opposed to somebody that eats a lot of peanuts or says, I can't eat peanuts because it's really upset my stomach when I eat a lot of peanuts. I feel my stomach feels bad for days. That's the difference between a sensitivity, someone just feels kind of after they eat peanuts, and an allergy, which is actually an immune stimulated, almost anaphylactic type response. So we have to be very careful as well, not only when you guys comment on my channel and you're asking for advice, but when you're relaying things to your veterinarian. So, if you say, oh, my pet has a food allergy, they're going to be thinking like an actual diagnosed in a proper way, actual allergy versus a sensitivity. And if you say that, you really, and they believe you and they don't kind of follow up on how that diagnosis maybe was come about, not saying that they shouldn't believe you, but just saying you got to be very careful with your words, because they do have meetings and some veterinarians may take those on face value and not realize that there's a large population of people that are using the term allergy and sensitivity interchangeably. And that, again, can lead to misdiagnosis, inappropriate, treatment plans, and more difficulty and more confusion. So very important that when you guys are discussing with your veterinarian or asking me questions, that we're very clear on whether we're talking about a food allergy and a food sensitivity. And we're going to get into, again, how we know for sure through a diagnostic process whether your pet has a food allergy or a sensitivity. And so let's get into a little bit about pet food allergies and how they differ from humans. I don't know a whole lot about human allergies because I'm not a human doctor, okay? I don't like to go out of my lane. But I do know quite a bit about pet allergies. And again, we're going to keep it on a very basic level. I'm not going to go into the type 1, type 2, type 3 hypersensitivity models. I have done that in my comment section with some of you guys. But the basics is, in pets, a pet must be exposed to the food and the allergen before it develops the allergy, okay? So they have to have come in contact with the specific ingredient that we're suspecting is causing the allergy before the immune system can then actually make the allergy. And so we're going to go through a little bit of scientific charts here. Again, this is probably the most scientific that we're going to get in this whole lecture series, so bear with me. For you, those of you that kind of are into immunology and things like that, you will enjoy this. I did steal these graphics. I didn't steal them. They're out there. You guys can find them from the Purina HA website because these were really good illustrations. And so the bottom, the little orange blob is the cell. And the little spiky thing, that is the allergen. So the cell is exposed to the allergen, and then it starts this immune cascade. So the cell sees the allergen, it gets scared, it activates some of the white blood cells, which are the T lymphocytes and the B cells, and they form these little allergy-specific complexes, which are called IgE. Those are the bad, like, inflammatory things. And so the body sees this little piece of protein, let's just call it chicken. The body sees chicken, because everybody hates chicken. Chicken's the bad boy. Sees the chicken, it gets confused, it starts activating the immune cells. The immune cells make IgE, and the IgE starts to activate the immune system. What happens is, once that process has started, later on, the animal eats that protein again. It eats chicken again. It's seeing it a second time. The allergen is recognized by all these IgE, these IgE particles that are living on the surface of the cell to kind of like protect itself, and it starts this inflammatory cascade. And so the allergen has to be, and this is coming from the HA website, and so this is going to transition us into treatment and theories for treatment for allergies. But the allergen, the way that it recognizes it is it's a specific shape. That's how it knows what the allergen is. That's how the IgE sets off the alarms, and so it recognizes it by the shape. And so that is very important as we're moving forward with some of our treatment protocols. And so that's one of the treatments, and one of the ways we diagnose food allergies is through hydrolyzed diets. A lot of you guys have asked me about hydrolyzed diets. Hydrolyzed diets are working because they are capitalizing on the immune system's focusing on the shape. That's how it's recognizing things. So hydrolyzed diets actually change the shape of the protein to make it different. So the immune system hasn't seen it before, essentially. It doesn't know, it can't pick it up, it's too small, it can't detect it. Allergens in pets, before we go any farther forward, are proteins, okay? If you guys are interested in the current research on that, I've posted this article that was recently done in JAVMA. It's one of the most recent ones. It talks about why we know that the most common allergies in pets are proteins. A lot of people say that their pets are allergic to corn, wheat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we just know statistically that's not the case. It is the proteins, it's the chicken, it's the lamb, it's the weird wombat, it's all these weird proteins sometimes that have come to the market that they are allergic to. We know that from research and data. And if you want to get into that further, go ahead and read this JAVMA article. How do we go down that road? How do we know if your pet has a food allergy? You have to do it based on a process called a food trial. It's a very specific algorithm. You cannot do it with a blood test. So a lot of veterinarians, a lot of veterinarians mistakenly have had blood tests or include blood tests for our patients that are itchy that include a food allergy profile. Dermatologists, and this is across the board, up-to-date information, dermatologists do not recommend you do that. Unfortunately, a lot of those are scams because those tests are not accurate enough. There's a lot of cross-reactivity, and so they will say your pet is positive for a food allergy because of the cross-reactivity and the low sensitivity and specificity of those tests. So all the food allergy tests across the board, doesn't matter what company, are not accurate enough to diagnose food allergy. Please do not do a blood test. If your pet had a blood test that said that they have food allergies, you may want to reevaluate that diagnosis. A food trial is the only accurate way to do that. And so I wanted to make sure I hit that high point because I know that's a common misconception. A lot of people are falling into the traps, and I've even seen some veterinarians maybe they aren't kind of up to speed with the literature, and it's not their fault because there's a lot of literature out there. They may not be dermatology focused, have kind of been convinced by some of these salespeople that blood tests for food allergy are a good thing, and they really aren't. Unfortunately, it is hard work, and it is a food trial. And so frequent diet changes do not constitute a food trial. Okay, a food trial is a very specific pattern and logical process that we have to follow in order to properly diagnose your pet with a food allergy. And so when a pet parent comes to me and they suspect that their pet has a food allergy, and I'm absolutely welcoming you guys coming to me and asking me and being concerned about it, there's a proper way to do it. But when the pet has come to me and they've already been through frequent diet changes, what that does is it delays a lot of times proper treatment because it wasn't a food allergy at all. Like we talked about, it's very statistically rare. There's a lot of other things that are probably going on. It makes our diagnosis of veterinarian very difficult because there's been a lot of diet changes and it's hard to say which ones have affected the pet in which way. It can prime the body, like we talked about, for more allergens because a lot of these, a lot of times when you guys are doing that, you're trying to pick different diets with different proteins. So now we've primed the body to have more allergens because we've shown them more proteins. Lots of diet changes can cause dietary indiscretion. So I see a lot of people come to my office that have an itchy dog and a dog with diarrhea now. And it can make it hard once we actually establish that there is truly a food allergen to now find a novel protein diet to feed that pet. A protein they haven't been exposed to, that they haven't yet developed this IgE, these IgE complexes, because you fed them all. And I think that's a lot of the reason why a lot of veterinarians don't like or unfavorable to some of these boutique brands is because they put all these different, and it's unnecessary, they put all these different protein sources, and we always joke about, what's Blue Buffalo going to come up with next? The wombat and lizard diet. It's unnecessary and it's limiting. Maybe your dog needed that wombat diet, but it was mixed with chicken and this, that, and the other, and now your dog is hypersensitized to wombat. And so it is a problem. And so how does one properly do a food trial? Here's a little bit of an algorithm, and there's way more that goes into it than this. This is kind of simplified. We talked about how this may be a little bit oversimplified, but here's just a kind of a rudimentary way. Your pet may have gastrointestinal signs, or may have dermatologic signs, or may have both. First thing always we have to do is rule out systemic disease and treat that. And so if your pet has a skin infection, it could have a skin infection and a flea allergy. It can have a skin infection and atopic dermatitis. It could have a skin infection and food allergy. Until that skin infection is resolved, you're not going to get results on anything because skin infections are itchy, okay? And so maybe your pet does have a flea allergy and you kill all the fleas on the pet, and that's wonderful. But if it has an active skin infection and it did not receive proper treatment for the skin infection, even though you killed all those fleas, the pet's gonna still be itchy. Same thing with environmental. Even if your pet got put on Apoquel or Cytopoint or any other type of environmental allergy treatment, but it had a skin infection, it's still gonna itch. And if your pet went through a proper food trial, but the skin infection was never treated, it's still gonna itch. If your pet has Cushing's unregulated, hypothyroid unregulated, Demodex, anything like that, if that is not treated before you go on the food trial, or at least at the very beginnings of the food trial, that is not controlled, garbage in, garbage out, right? So we got to have the proper diagnosis of any other underlying diseases, and that needs to be situated before you go on your food trial. And then we need to pick an appropriate diet to do the food trial with. And so we talked a little bit about the size of the protein and the Daltons, which is the size and the shape of the protein. The normal proteins are very large, and so we want to pick a diet that has a very small Dalton protein source so that it's not recognized. The body can't recognize it. It's so small it can't be recognized. And so that's what hydrolyzed diets are. And so we need to pick one of those usually. Back in the day, we used to do novel protein diets. We used to do the rabbit and potato, or we used to do the venison and potato, or salmon and potato. Now we can't do that because all these diets have those in there. And that's very unfortunate because the hydrolyzed diets are very expensive, and some of the limited protein diets were a little bit more expensive than the regular diets, but they weren't nearly as expensive as the technology that is required to make a hydrolyzed diet. And so, again, that's why a lot of veterinarians got a little bit aggravated with some of these companies that started to do that, because it ruined it for a lot of people, and it priced a lot of people out of doing appropriate food trials. So for this particular illustration, they're using Purina HA because that's the diet that, or the where I got this graphic from. And then you have to do that diet solely as a sole diet for the skin 8 to 12 weeks. 8 weeks minimum. I say 12 weeks to give realistic expectations in my practice. 8 to 12 weeks. That is the only thing that can touch your pet's mouth. And so some people, I know in other countries, they can get some of these prescription diets over the counter. But really it should be on your direction of your veterinarian, because if you miss one of these little details, so let's say you're doing your food trial diet, but you're still given a heart guard, it's gonna make it null and void. You're still given an X-Guard, you're still giving a vitamin, maybe you're doing at home, you're still giving a glucosamine supplement that has something by mouth, given that by mouth at home. Your partner just gives it a potato chip every once in a while, just a potato chip. You can't do any of that stuff. The result that you're going to get, the food trial is going to be invalid. The information we're going to get from the food trial is going to be bad. Garbage in, garbage out. Like, how many times are we going to say that during the day? But that's very important. I can't tell you the number of people that have thought they were doing it right, and then they come in and they fill a heart guard, and I'm like, you can't, what are you doing? You can't be giving a heart guard. We're on a food trial. Okay, so things that your veterinarian will be able to help you work through and make sure that you're doing it properly and support you through the process, because 12 weeks is a long time. That's a long time out of your life, and it can be very frustrating. Food trials are very difficult. Again, another reason why I don't jump to them right away, because it's statistically not likely that your pet has a food allergy, and they're very difficult to do. So after the 12 weeks, what are we going to do? If there's no improvement, we're going to look for an alternative. It's not a food allergy. And so we're going to look for another cause, some of the things we mentioned earlier. If there's partial improvement, we may go a little bit longer on the food trial, or we may say, look, dogs that have allergies a lot of times have multiple allergies. Maybe your dog has a food allergy and it has an environmental allergy. Maybe it's 50-50, so maybe we need to do those two things concurrently the next 4 weeks and see where we get. If the pet is like miraculously better, and I have a lot of patients that are like this, we do the food trial, they really commit to it, they're hitting it hard. No, that's wonderful. We're going to diagnose your pet at that. Well, it's not wonderful because your pet now has an actual food allergy, and you're kind of destined to be feeding this hydrolyzed diet for a very long time. But we're not going to stop there. We have to test that hypothesis. And so we're going to do a challenge. We're going to we've had a great disease-free interval for however many weeks, usually about if the last 4 weeks of the food trial are really good, or we know like how often the pet's getting a skin infection, that's how we're going to say, okay, we're diagnosing them with a food allergy. Each case is individual. So again, this is going to be something you're going to talk about with your veterinarian. We're going to do a challenge. And once we feed that new food, whatever it was, a commercial diet, the diet you were feeding before, whatever it is, if that pet then becomes itchy in the next several weeks, we know that that was the case. I will be honest, I very rarely get to the challenge portion. At least I don't get to it purposely, because a lot of people, the pets have been suffering so long, they just went through 12 weeks, it's been wonderful, they don't even want to risk it. They don't want to risk it for the biscuit. And so sometimes inadvertently people are like, look, I do agree that it's a food allergy, but I just really can't afford the hydrolyzed diet. I do know it's a food allergy, but I want to try some over-the-counter ones and see if they work. They're not going to work, unfortunately, but I do let people kind of work that out for themselves. They're not going to work because over-the-counter diets, again, they don't have that small Dalton. The shape of the protein is not altered such that it's not going to be inflammatory. And a lot of the over-the-counter diets, they can't guarantee how that food's processed, so they share plants with a lot of other companies. A lot of these companies, again, I've talked about my pet peeve with having these giant portfolios. They're mixing proteins and they're mixing things. So even if the food says, oh, it's salmon and rice, they can't guarantee there's not other stuff in there. They can't guarantee that the products that they have gotten to make that didn't come in contact with another food. And so I would say 9 times out of 10, even when I've looked through the ingredient list with people, and even if you've called the company, if they did well on a hydrolyzed diet, the chances of them being able to do an over-the-counter diet are unfortunately very slim. Here's just an idea. We talked about the molecular weight in Daltons. The average molecular weight of hydrolyzed soy is going to be down here. That's what HA uses, 11,533 Daltons. The hydrolyzed chicken, so that's going to be like HillZ, is going to be 13,548. And then your average molecular weight of all the other things that are not hydrolyzed are going to be like in the 28,000 or greater category. So you can see they're making that protein a third of what it is. I've heard companies getting even less than the 11,000. I've seen some in the 3,000s, the 5,000s. But what you're shooting for is basically anything less than kind of like 20,000. So that's kind of the deal with that. So what are some examples? Throw a couple out there. Maybe you can discuss these with your veterinarian. They don't all list what the Daltons are, but some of them did. So you got Purina. They have their Vet Life Ultra Hypo. I've seen my local university use this on some cases. It is a hydrolyzed fish protein, and it's less than 6,000 Daltons. So again, we're well below that 20,000. I didn't go through and I did not address, didn't do the pet food scoring system on these guys, because sometimes when you're managing disease, and I don't do a lot of videos on managing disease, but when you're managing disease, sometimes there are risks and rewards, and those are things you have to discuss with your veterinarian. So I've not judged these on a nutritional level, because your pet's skin may be so bad that we've got to make some concessions. So I didn't even evaluate these on that. But that's an option for you. Vet Life, Purina Vet Life Ultra Hypo is one. HillZ is a very popular one. It's going to be a chicken one. The one you want is the ZD Ultra. Actually, I think they only make the ZD Ultra. They used to have just a regular ZD that was a larger Dalton, and then they had the ZD Ultra. Now I think they're all just ZD Ultra. And so another option there. You've got Royal Canin. They've got two. They've got the Royal Canin hydrolyzed protein, which is the HP, and then they have the Ultimino. Ultimino, again, is the ultra super restrictive. So the dogs that have really bad food allergies, I have seen my local dermatologist kind of jump straight to the Ultimino. It is very pricey because that processing is so on point. And then again, we've got the Purina Pro Plant HA. It's hydrolyzed soy protein. So it is actually kind of like a vegetarian option for those people that are into that. So it was kind of nice that they did have that option available to clients. And so yes, these products are prescription. At least they're prescription here in the U.S. What are my thoughts on them being prescription? I kind of went over that, right? We had a lot of options that were more beneficial cost-wise for people before things started getting muddied. And so I don't want hydrolyzed diets to be lost. So I don't want so many people feeding them inappropriately and feeding them for the inappropriate time span, and immune systems and our pet friends learning our trick, okay? And so I like that it is prescription. Because I like to help you guys understand the proper food trial process. I want to walk through that. I want to walk through the expectations. I want to make sure that your pet doesn't have a skin infection or Cushing's disease or diabetes or Demodex or any of that stuff before we start using these very valuable tools and start using them inappropriately and irresponsibly. And so I think that's why they're prescription, and I don't think it's inappropriate. So that's my take on it. And no, it's not just because I make money on these diets and I sell them in my office. I don't sell all of these in my office. I usually have one like option in my office for people. I live in a rural area that don't want to like have it shipped or try to find it. But I write prescriptions all day long for these, and I don't make a penny off of the prescriptions I write. So not sponsored, don't get paid. I just wanted you guys to learn about food allergies today. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you guys will hang out with me again if you have any other questions. I do kind of like doing these educational ones. I hope you liked it. And yeah, like and subscribe, and we'll hang out again real soon.